Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Toxic Bliss, Surviving Narcissism with me, Awen Reese. In the last episode, we started to take a look at the intensity of the love-bombing phase of my relationship with Mike. We'll continue that theme today as we continue on our road trip and reach the shocking secret that awaits me at our destination. I was talking about this podcast and the retelling of these events with my husband, Liam. He's been keeping a close eye on me since I began this project. He fully supports what I'm doing, but he's also very cognizant of the fact that reliving these events could easily spark an emotional response. So far, there hasn't been one, which is a sign of the progress that I've made in my healing and recovery, as well as a testament to the loving, supportive, and healthy relationship that we're currently in. As you'll hear much later in the story, Liam played a pivotal role in my life as I escaped my connection to Mike. Liam has been with me every step of the way during the last 15 years, and there were some rough patches for sure, as addressing all of the trauma in therapy can be just as difficult as going through it for the first time. But Liam has been my rock, and I just wanted to take a moment and mention him, for without him, this project wouldn't have gotten off the ground. Before we begin the story, let me take one moment to make an important disclaimer. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or mental health professional. If you need help or if you're in a dangerous situation, please reach out. I urge you to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their advocates are available 24/7 at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. All calls are free and confidential. You can also reach them online at www.thehotline.org. The rest of the drive to Florida seems rather uneventful on the surface, but what was going on was an unending assault on my mind. In every possible way, and in every possible situation, Mike was showing me that he was, in fact, Mr. Perfect. Except for one. During the entire 3-day journey, he never once mentioned Eddie or Maggie. If I brought them up, he would deftly change the subject back to something about him. He had kept my head spinning in so many different directions, though always about him, that I didn't even notice. We talked a lot during the drive. There wasn't much else to do. And whenever I told him something from my childhood or my life, he would respond with over-the-top and effusive sympathy or praise, whichever the story demanded. At the time, it felt that he was listening so closely to my every word, and he completely understood my feelings about everything. In fact, what he was doing was mirroring my expectations back to me in a way that made him seem like my lost twin flame. Evening fell on the 3rd day, and we were getting near to the border with Florida. We had had about 3 hours left to go, but I was getting really tired, and my back was aching like mad. We decided to have a short stop and a quick nap, and he found a hotel. This one didn't have any whirlpool tubs, alas, but it was still nice and extremely comfortable. He went out and got us some food while I rested up in the room. Then we ate and relaxed and napped for a few hours, and it was about 11 p.m. when we decided to finish the last leg of our trip. I noticed that he was talking a lot more than he had been up until now during this segment of the drive. I asked him if he was okay. He seemed a little hyper, almost agitated. He explained to me that he was just so excited to get home and start our new life together and get out of this darn truck. That seemed like a perfectly reasonable answer to me because I was, after all, feeling the same thing. The signs for Jacksonville, Florida appeared, and we were heading toward the Mayport Naval Base. The apartment complex he lived in wasn't on the base, but it was relatively close. He promised that he'd take me to the base to see the ships. He was ex-Navy himself and had access to the port. That sounded fun, and I looked forward to it. He didn't want to talk much about what he did in the Navy, though. I had asked a bunch of questions, and he didn't really answer. But he had a collection of T-shirts, ball caps, jackets, and they all had the Navy emblem on it, so I assumed he was proud of his service. But he was incredibly reluctant to discuss it. I found that odd, but I didn't press him on the matter. Years later, I would come to understand that he was very proud of having been in the Navy, and he wanted the world to know that he had been in the Navy, but he was equally as ashamed of the reason he left. Eventually, we arrived at the apartment, our apartment. I could not wait to get inside and see my new home. I didn't expect too much, considering that all of my furniture and belongings were sitting in the back of the truck, but I was eager to see what, if anything, Mike had done with the place since we rented it while I was back in Connecticut. "Is this unit close to your old apartment?" I asked inquisitively. He didn't answer me, and I assumed that he hadn't heard. He grabbed the overnight bags from the cab of the truck and led us to the door. We went in, and it took a minute for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. I was looking around for the light switch, but he said quickly, No, they're sleeping." And I moved my hand back to my side. "They're sleeping?" I asked in a hushed voice. Who is they, and why are they sleeping in my apartment? I wondered. As I was asking myself that question, I noticed a woman laying on the sofa. Now, where'd the sofa come from? Because mine was still in the truck. And who is the woman, and what is going on? The woman got up, and Mike walked over to her, and she hugged him tightly. "Hey, you made it. I missed you," she said. I stood in stark silence, stunned, and half sure I was hallucinating. "Go on up. I'll be there in a second," he said to her, and motioned her toward the stairs. She went up the steps and disappeared. I looked at him with my mouth agape, and he smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'll explain it in the morning. Just get some sleep. It's almost 3 a.m. He said to me, and he motioned me toward the sofa. I honestly could not even speak. I sat down on the couch and watched as he climbed the stairs and presumably joined that woman in another room. There I was, alone in the dark, on someone else's sofa, in someone else's home, and I had no idea what was going on. The next thing I remember was waking up the next morning. Now, when I say that, I'm not simply being conversational. I literally have no memory of anything that night after seeing him climb the stairs. I don't know if I fell asleep immediately. I don't know if I cried all night, if I paced around, anything. The only thing I remember is waking up the next morning. I heard some soft noises and cracked one eye open. I saw that woman again, and she was ironing some white pants on a little miniature ironing board on the floor. I didn't move or make a sound, as I didn't want to alert her to my wakefulness, lest I have to talk to her before I found out what was going on. She disappeared into the first-floor bathroom and came out a bit later in her navy whites. She grabbed her purse and left. I heard a car start and pull away, and okay, she was gone now. Where the F was Mike? I sat up and had begun looking around the room to assess the situation. I saw a brand new diaper bag and some baby items on the floor in the living room, which was actually more of a storage area than a living space, as the floor was cluttered with hundreds of Walmart bags full of new and unused items. There were mountains of clothes, whether clean or dirty I couldn't tell. Dishes covered the coffee table. There were empty soda cups all over the end tables. Books, magazines, stacks of papers were piled everywhere. This was disgusting and overwhelming. He came bounding down the stairs before I had completed my visual inspection. "Hey, you're awake. Morning, honey," he said as he kissed my forehead. I jerked backwards reflexively. Oh no, I wasn't having any of that nonsense. I pointed to the diaper bag. "When did you get that? Isn't that a bit presumptuous?" I asked. "Oh, that," he said. That's that stuff, that's Tina's. Didn't you notice?" And I looked at him, blinking rapidly. Didn't I notice what? "Well, Tina," he said, "she's pregnant. Almost 9 months now. Oh, don't worry, it's not mine," he added, laughing as if that was the silliest thought in the world. "She was at sea when she got pregnant. It's not mine," he reiterated. Now, I may not be the best mathematician on the planet, but I did some quick calculations. Based on my estimation, 9 months before today, she would not have been at sea. She would have been home. He must have seen the expression that I make when I'm doing very complicated math in my head. Before I had even announced my findings, he again stated that there was no way the baby was his. I decided to drop that line of conversation for the moment, turning to a more immediate problem. "Why was she here in our apartment?" "Oh, that," he said. "Well, you see, The office hadn't gotten our new apartment ready yet, so they gave me back the deposit and said we could apply for one in November, so we'll have to stay here for a bit, but it's okay with Tina." "Oh. Well, what did you do with the deposit?" I asked him. "What?" he said with a tone that inferred that I should already know this information. Why would I even be asking him? "Well, I used it for the trip, remember?" No, I didn't remember. "What trip are you talking about?" I asked him. He rolled his eyes this time, obviously unhappy with the interrogation that he was getting. "The trip to get you. Duh." "Oh, hell no, you did not just duh me." I grabbed my purse and headed outside to go somewhere, anywhere. I don't know, I just had to get away from him before I became the next Florida woman headline. I'm going to pause here for a short break and grab a drink. When we come back, we'll see what happens next. Welcome back. Let's continue on with our tale. I went out the door and saw a little playground area just across the way. Oh, that'd do, I thought. I headed over there and sat down on a swing, and I rummaged through my purse to find my emergency pack of cigarettes. I had quit smoking recently, but wasn't sure of myself enough to not have an emergency pack around. And right this minute, I was awfully glad I did. I sat on the swing, defiantly smoking my cigarette, and I tried to think. It wasn't as easy as it may sound, and where do you even start with something like this? Tina was living in my... No, wait. I was living in Tina's home as a guest. A guest? She was about to have a baby that may or may not be Mike's. He had spent all the deposit money for the new apartment. On what? I didn't even know yet. And that was a pretty sizable amount of money. It wasn't just the deposit. It was the application deposit, the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and a full security deposit. And on top of all this, Eddie and Maggie were due to arrive that afternoon. Oh, dear Lord, what have I done? My brain started racing through possible solutions. I could pick up Eddie and Maggie in a cab. We could rent a car and drive the truck right back to Connecticut, back to my mother's house, and then what? Get a new apartment there together? New jobs, new everything, and start over? Starting a brand new life over with someone that you're about to divorce is kind of unusual, but I could make it work, maybe. I could call my mother and ask her for a sizable loan and look for an apartment down here, since we'd all be here with all of our stuff anyway. I didn't have any great desire to go back to Connecticut over anywhere else, really, but my mother was not the easiest person to get money out of, and the lecture that I knew I'd get from her made that option seem out of the question. There was Eddie's mom. She owned some properties here in Florida. Maybe she had one that we could stay in, but that woman is crazy as the day is long, and I would rather sleep in the back of the rental truck than have her know where we are, so that was a no. I didn't have enough money left for us to get a hotel for an extended stay either. At around $100 a night, that would break the bank pretty quick. I'm usually very good at logistics and problem solving, but this one seemed too big, even for me. Tears had started streaming down my face as I realized the severity of my situation. I didn't know what to do, and I had very few places I could turn to for help. How was I going to get out of this mess? As I was sitting there, feeling decidedly lost and hopeless, I noticed Mike was coming across the street. Oh, great, just what I need. He walked up to me and tried to put his arm around my shoulder. I brushed it away. He saw the cigarette in my hand and made a face. "Yuck! I hate smoking," he said. "Oh, don't even start with me about that right now, pal. That is the least of your worries," I said in the sharpest tone I could manage. He immediately backed off. Okay, I'm sorry. Under the circumstances, I guess it's allowed." I instantly cocked my head toward him and started to stand up. I don't know what I was about to do, but he read that as rather threatening and took another step backwards. Okay there, killer. Relax. Let's just talk," he said quickly. I narrowed my eyes and sat back down on the swing. "Nothing's changed, sweetheart," he cajoled. "Everything is the same as it was yesterday. We just have to wait to move for a little bit, and it'll be fine, you'll see." Why? I asked him. Why didn't you tell me any of this while we were in Connecticut, or even before you flew up there? He paused and sighed. He adopted a stance and a facial expression that morphed him into a small, frightened child. I was scared, he explained. I knew that if I told you, you wouldn't come. Well, yeah, you were flippin' right about that, I snapped. He seemed to grow even smaller and started to... Were those tears? I'm so sorry. I was selfish. I was so scared that I'd lose you, and I couldn't lose you again, not after being in jail. You're all I want in this life, and I can't live it without you. Please don't leave me. We'll fix this, I swear. Somehow. And with that, he sank to his knees in front of me and put his head in my lap. He continued to sob. Please don't leave me. I need you. I love you. I was stunned once again. I'd never seen a man humble himself in this way. This was beyond anything I'd even seen in movies. Was this real? Was he genuinely feeling this? I wasn't sure. Did he really love me so much that he would behave like this in public where anyone could see? Did he really mean the things that he was saying? I struggled to imagine anyone being able to fake something like this. If he was faking it, he missed his calling on the silver screen, that was for sure, if nothing else was. I was silent for a while as I was contemplating all of this. I could accept what he was saying as true, even though he had just pulled off a monumental lie just as convincingly as he was now, or I could wait for Eddie and just leave. Oh, dear heart, this was a moment of such torturous conflict, and I was pressured to make this decision instantly. I only had a few hours before I had to get Eddie at the train station, and I needed to have a plan in place so the transition would go as smoothly as possible for Maggie. Moving across the country was enough of an upheaval in her life. I needed to present a stable environment for her no matter what, or so I thought at the time anyway. In retrospect, I should have just called my mother, told her what happened, gotten myself back home despite the wrath I would have endured, but I didn't. I put my arms around Mike and reached down and kissed the top of his head. I love you too, I said. We'll figure this out. His joy at my response felt genuine. To this day, I think it was genuine, insofar as he got what he wanted out of it, me. He sat up and enveloped me in another of his famous bear hugs. When I wrestled free of it, I looked him in the eye and told him that I was not happy, and this was not a celebration. I would not ever tolerate being lied to like this, and if it happened again, I was gone. He had lost a lot of my trust, and he would have to work hard to rebuild it. But the words I said didn't matter. The only thing that he heard, so to speak, was that his ruse had worked, and he had convinced me to stay. His lesson was that his ability to manipulate me was successful and complete. There were so many mistakes I made that day. I knew that this situation was about as wrong as anything could get. He had lied to me so profoundly that everything I trusted turned out to be wrong. I had lost my sense of up and down, inside or out. Everything was twisted, crazy, frightening, and I was simply overwhelmed. I should have walked out and never looked back. I should have called my mother. I should have trusted Eddie to help me think of a way out of this. But I did none of those things. Looking back on this day, many years later, a lot of things made more sense. The love bombing on the ride down to Florida was not simply just to convince me to love him, but it was a way of ensuring that I was so completely wrapped up in him that once I learned the secret he was hiding, I would still choose to stay with him. It worked. He was indeed agitated during the last leg of our trip because he knew what I was about to discover, and he was trying his best to hide it. I don't think there's any way to convey in words just how powerful of a hold he had over me. Unless you've experienced it yourself, it may be impossible to understand the choices I made during this relationship. Issues from my own childhood had left me vulnerable as prey to people like him. abandonment issues, codependency issues, things I wasn't even aware existed and certainly didn't know I was harboring, left me wide open to his behavior and impeded my ability to think clearly and rationally. I'm not trying to say that I was an entirely unwilling victim by any means. I wanted him so badly, and I made choices that I knew were wrong. But at the same time, I'm not victim-blaming myself either. It was a perfect storm of problems that enabled this tragedy to occur. Part of healing is understanding why things happen, and it's just a fact that certain psychological issues make some people far more prone to ending up in these situations than others. I needed to understand why I was one of those people in order to ensure that it never happened again. In the next episode, Eddie and Maggie arrive and we settle into an awkward and, well, let's just call it what it is, insane living arrangement with our new hosts. Until then, thank you for listening and take care.
People ask me what my secret is, I just smile